None of them got out of place. None of them tried to attack our character. They was all really pretty nice. I mean, from the Air Force to the law enforcement and all. So we sat there and we told them a little bit what happened. And they said, well, y'all can go. Well, the sheriff and his deputy took us back out to the car. And we got in the car and we was going. They said, now, look, we take y'all back to the shipyard, but y'all don't need to leave. There's somebody there that wants to see you or talk to you. I thought, man, when's this day going to be over so I can go home? We got back, and the person that was there, of course, I didn't know him or know who he was or know what he was doing or anything, was Dr. Heineck that was over Project Blue Book. Of course, Project Blue Book wasn't known at this time now in 73. Him and Dr. James Allen Harder came down on their own dime and wanted to interview us and investigate this case themselves. Now, how they got down that fast, I don't know, because if they were in California where they lived and took a plane straight there, they still wouldn't have made it that quick. But they did. I even asked Paul Heineck, their son. I got to meet him and spend a good deal of time with him at this conference. How did they get there if he knew? He said he had no idea unless they was already down here on something. But anyhow, Dr. Heineck took me into a room, and Harder took Charlie into a room. Well, while Harder was examining Charlie and Heineck was talking to me, and then I went in there to see Harder, and Charlie went in with Dr. Heineck. Of course, he checked my arms for the injection wounds and all that, you know, and they was there. They was marks right there. And my face was pretty bruised up where that, whatever it was, run her fingers down my throat. And, you know, she got a little bit rough there. So, anyhow, they'd seen us, and I wanted to go home. He said, look, y'all go on back, get you some rest. I'm going out to the site, look at the site, and I'm going to talk to some people. And I want to see y'all in the morning again. Out of respect for him, being they told me who he was, and I was scared not to come back in the morning because I was starting to hear stories. Now, before this time, I didn't know what a UFO or an alien was or what men in black were, nothing else. Didn't really care. So we went in, got some rest, come back the next morning. And I remember the first thing Heineck was doing was having a conversation with the sheriff and asking them why they didn't tape off the site where this happened and leave a guard out there until he could get that evidence checked. But, you know, they didn't. Back in, they didn't worry too much about stuff. So we got through with our little interview things with him, and that's when I cut trail. Just as soon as we got through, my clothes was in the car. I just left Charlie at the shipyard, and I shagged my butt to Laurel, Mississippi, where home was to me, which was 109 miles from the coast. Of course, I went through a lot of problems when I got there. I had a nervous breakdown one time. The media wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't want to talk about all this. I was broken-hearted with Charlie because he was supposed to be a friend, and I just knew Charlie's the one that broke the story. Now, later on, I did find out how the story got out, and it wasn't Charlie, but this caused, I guess in a way Charlie did, because he went on to publicize it and talk about it and all, and I took the other road of just being quiet, not saying nothing about it. But people in the state of Mississippi, and I guess they this way anywhere, are generally pretty nosy. So they all had scanners, and they was listening in on police scanners. They would listen to the police department and the fire departments on these handheld scanners. And when the sheriff department called this in, that's when it kind of got out. Mississippi Press newspaper was monitoring scanners. Of course, they couldn't wait to tell a story that good and get them on the spotlight. And that's where the news media started. And they wouldn't leave me alone. They hounded me. I figured if I stay hid for a week, everybody gets the 15 minutes of fame and it'll be gone. I didn't know it was going to be 45 years of fame in this deal. I chose not to talk to my wife or my friends about this at the time because I was in the process of getting married the next month. This happened in October. I was going to get married in November. And her daddy would have twisted my head off. But they all heard about it in the news. I chose not to talk about it myself because I just didn't want to talk about it at the time. And up until I decided to do the book, which was last year, I kept my silence until this book come out. And I didn't really ever figure one book would sell. I figured I was going to buy 10 copies, hand one of them out to my family members, one or two to my friends, and say, y'all read this. Y'all read about it. I'm not going to tell you about it. But this thing skyrocketed. Within the first week, we was #1 bestseller. And it just went from there. Every day something new's happened and something else is coming in. And then now the second book's out because we didn't have it wouldn't be fair to write a little article in the first book and put it back out and somebody had to buy it to read that one. So we ended up, by the time Philip got through with all the evidence in there and interviewing all the new witnesses, and it's Pascagoula, the story continues, new evidence and new witnesses. And it's as big as the first book. We have books in French, Spanish, German. They're coming out in Russian. And we just in every country around right now.
Well, I got to say something. Your story, what happened to you, between you and Terry Lovelace and Whitney Spreber, I tell you, it is really convincing. Stuff is going on and what you went through. And I got to ask you a question. All this to you, emotionally, did it cause you to have to go from job to job to job? I mean, did it cause insecurity, or what did it cause to you, the damage emotionally?
I got a lot of practice filling out resumes. Yes, sir. I went from job to job. And when somebody found out where I was and started asking me about it, I would just quit that job and go find me something else to do. Now, what I did, I started out in the oil field, and I've done everything from oil field to bounty hunt to construction work. And the only peace of mind I really got, I kind of bought a construction company and run it myself. And I hid my name from everybody. I didn't tell them who I was. This neighborhood that we lived in here, it's actually a good neighborhood. The neighbors and all tried to protect me the best they could, or my identity. But, every now and then somebody would slip up and want to say, that's that guy that got abducted by the aliens over there. Now, everybody's been real nice, and nobody's really ridiculed me about it. They find it interesting. And that's the way that the book had to come about. We had a neighbor that passed away, and we went to the wake. And normally I would never sign nothing in public where somebody could read my name. But I signed the register that day because my wife was busy. And when I signed that register, people started walking up and talking, "Are you the Calvin Parker?" Well, that's what I've been all my life since 1954. They said, well, tell us about. I said, so we sat there and talked just a minute, just kind of shot the bull. And I said, look, fellas, this is not the place to talk about this. I said, this lady and her daughter is grieving, and I don't want to interfere with their grieving or their families or whatever's going on here. So I told my wife, let's just get in the car and leave. Well, on the way home, she said, why don't you write a book? The people really care about you. I said, the people really don't care about me. They want to hear about the story. I said, I don't have an education, Juanette. And I didn't. I said, I don't know how to write a book. I don't want to write a book. Well, she just kept on about it. I finally said, well, maybe I'll find a ghostwriter. I had no intentions of letting nobody write a book about this. And we went on home, and just to pacify her, shut her up about it. Well, just so happened the next day, Philip Mantle from the UK called on a complete different idea. He wanted to ask me some things about Charlie's book. That's like I told him, I don't know about Charlie's book. I never read the book. The only thing I know is Charlie Hickson came to me and said, sign this contract. I was young and dumb then, and we'll give you a little percentage of this. I never received a dime. It actually cost me money by signing a deal. I mean, so, I never got a penny off that book. I never read the book, never wanted the book. Finally, Philip gave me a book, and I still hadn't read it. Don't care to read it. I don't want to know what happened to him. I know what happened to me, and that's it. So in the meantime, Philip said, well, why don't you write a book? I said, Philip, I don't have an education. And my deal is every time I talk to the media about this, they change it up. They change the story. As bizarre as this is, they want to change it and add to it or take away from it. I understand. He said, well, think about it. I'm going to call you back in a week. He said, let me give you something to think about. I said, all right, give me something to think about. He said, let this be your legacy. It'll be in black and white. They can't nobody change that. And, your story's out there then. You don't have to tell them it's there. I said, well, I'll think about it. Call me in a week. Well, what I did on his phone number, on your caller ID, I just put no answer where the number was because I had no intentions of talking to this man again. And didn't know him, didn't care to even get to know him then because he was on this UFO subject. Well, I was at the boat landing, loading my boat, and my phone started ringing, and it just kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And I thought, well, something might be wrong at home. I reached up on my boat, picked up the phone, didn't look at it, just answered the phone. Well, have you thought about it? This is Philip. Have you thought about it? Yeah, I don't really care to do this, Philip. Make it your legacy. So we talked a few minutes, and he actually started making a lot of sense. And then my wife had been on my case about it. So between him and her both, I said, now, Philip, here's the deal. I'll do a little book. I don't want nothing changed in it. I don't have an education. I don't want any words corrected. I don't want a punctuation mark put in. I don't want nothing changed whatsoever. Now, he changed one word in the whole book, and it kind of was funny. At the back of the book, I was talking about eating a bologna sandwich, and he changed it to a blondie sandwich because he didn't really understand what a bologna sandwich is, I don't guess. I don't know what they eat over in the UK. I know they don't speak good English, even though they invented the language over there.
Now, hey, Calvin, I hate to say it, it's time for a break, and then we have you for another half an hour. We're going to find out a little bit more about this, and I think James has a lot of questions to ask you. So, if you want to get a cup of Java, a cup of tea, or whatever, you got about 3 minutes, Calvin, and we'll be back with Calvin Parker on Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
Selfish and cruel since his youthful days in school. His siblings he never did treat well. His self-centered bent was his dark side lament, with a focus on hypnotizing spells. He memorized laws to help sharpen his claws, for a future for which he was bent. The time would surely come when for office he would run and claim